Now, to give you some perspective, if you're not familiar with the content of Engage, every single project has the same management section. So the nice thing is if you were, researching, looking at projects, maybe you want to replicate. When I used to be in, especially in pharmaceutical work, we used projects to do a lot of R&D phases and a lot of R&D development. And often you would get maybe regulatory deficiency, and you would get somebody that would need to answer a question when we were going through for final approval, or maybe we just wanted to see, what happened with that continuous improvement. Well, often it would be all holes barred. We'd have a all-night pizza party. We would be going through analytical files. We would be going through looking at Excel sheets. We'd be looking at Word documents. Sometimes we'd be looking at actually paper logs to try to piece together, what was this project all about? Here, you don't have to do that because within minutes, I can take a look at things like where the project is today, what idea came up with the project, some more detailed information in the charter. Most important for a lot of folks, now this is a design one, so they haven't identified the dollars yet. We'll do that later. But financial data, team members and roles and tasks. So very important that those are the things that you have up front of mind, and folks can get up to speed very quickly. So now this QFT is a template where we have things like preparation, house of quality, design scorecards, and we've added some VSMs and some simulations. So what we're going to do here is we have this pairwise comparison matrix, and we're going to do some research because eventually this is going to be the data that's going to be used to go into this house of quality. Now, assume that you were doing this and you're just not sure, what this is all about, how to fill it out. Well, the nice thing is, I can just come down to the bottom here and see that there are instructions. So I can have those closed or I can open them up, and then those instructions can be configured. Well, we have some default instructions for some of these templates, but all of that can be configured as well. So if there's maybe, especially if you're doing rankings, any kind of numeric scale, I always suggest that that's a good thing to define in here. What does a 1 mean as opposed to a 5? And so for the context of your organization, you can put those instructions in. But what they're doing in this is they're looking at these customer requirements. These may have come from surveys, they may come from engineering information, and possibly they came from some of these quality type magazines. Maybe it's Consumers Reports, maybe it's Ward's Automotive in this case, because you have a car, and they're getting this feedback. So they're looking at things like, what's the requirement of a customer? Do I want my door to be easy to close? Do I want a soft and comfortable armrest? So they're listing all of these requirements, and you can see I can add more very easily. I can change the order of these very easily. They're looking at what the frequency, how many of these that they've had, and then what's the importance. And they also now can rank those as critical or non-critical. So now we can also kind of take a look, are there relationships between? So if there's any kind of correlation between these effects, we can identify that. But what I really like is there's Pareto charts that are available. Tables and summaries are great, but people love pictures. And especially if you wanted to communicate this to maybe a manager or somebody that isn't really in the depths of the content of this project, charts and graphs are always great. So I can take a look and see that easy to close from the outside is not only is it a key characteristic, but it is the most prevalent characteristic in our data. And then when I come down to, is my arm right in the right position? That's my lowest that's my lowest one, look from a frequency perspective, and it's not critical. And this comes to when I used to be an engineering manager. I was an engineering manager for a high-speed packaging facility, and I had several engineers. And I remember one of the things I told my plant manager was, I don't see my job as telling my team of engineers what to do. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, I think my job is to tell them what not to worry about. And basically, what I'm getting at is providing focus. Engineers are serial thinkers, they like to thoroughly solve problems. So we know these areas down here, maybe we don't need to spend as much time on today. Maybe we get them later, but these are the areas we want to really focus on in our design. And I also can see in the importance rating, easy to close from the outside is also very high in the importance rating. So I know that that's an important characteristic. Now in this house of quality, we also have baked in instructions. But now folks can put this data together, and I'm not going to get too deep into this because this is fairly complicated, but we can see these customer characteristics and kind of the physics that are related, and now we can kind of get an idea. We now just don't have these characteristics. We have some numerics. We can have some scores. We can get an idea of the relevance, and then we can actually start analyzing in cases of, hey, where do we have strong interactions? So in this particular case, the check force on a 10-degree slope and the check force on level ground, we have these high interactions. Just a great way to focus and organize thoughts. Now these house of quality matrices are going to come in and allow us to create some design scorecards. So now from all this information we're organizing from our customers, from those engineering aspects, we now can start to put some actionable characteristics together for our design activity to make that improvement to that door. Along with that, we can now have a value stream map so we can visualize not only how the process is occurring, but where we are as far as getting these things done, what our lead times are, our tack times are, and we can put those all together. The nice thing about these value stream maps and Engage, they have this full logic. So you don't have to worry about doing all your calculations. You just put your values in, your calculations are done for you. And now for one of my favorite parts. When you talk about design, think about that customer was unhappy with the door, the function of the door. So really, what is that? We had created risk of customer dissatisfaction. Well, if we're going to come up with a new design, if I am a manager worth their salt and I'm in charge of this project and I'm getting reviewed from all my folks, I'm going to say, well, let's do some assessment of risk. How do I know what you're projecting here is going to work? And that's where these simulations are really nice. And without getting too complicated, in very high level terms, what we have is a model has been created for inputs to outputs. And remember I said this door is kind of weak and sagging, so they had a thickness value. Maybe it's the hinges, I'm not exactly sure, but that would make sense. And they're trying to identify these processing variables that are affecting our output. Once we've done that in a model, keep in mind, if we do predictions from a model, we're just getting average results. Well, average doesn't hurt you in the real world, it's variation. So what we do with these simulations is we take the behavior of the inputs, and now we come up with, here's the range of what we can expect in the real world. So I can see that starting out where we decided to set things, we're going to have about 17% of these doors that aren't going to meet our requirements because of poor thickness. Now we can optimize, and for the sake of time, we're going to optimize. And what that basically does is it says, let's change your average setting. So here, instead of 30 and 5, we went to 23, 9, and 5. And that's the average and the standard deviation. Now, the standard deviation usually you can't fix or change in this particular case. So you can see we're changing our settings. Um, the other setting and temperature didn't change at all. But when we do change settings, boy, we've really centered that up and we reduced ourselves from 17% down to 3% out of spec. What's the last thing we can do? What if we can reduce variation? Where's variation hurting us? Time. So processing time is really causing us some problem. So we're going to have to do some engineering analysis, but let's say we have maybe some new controls that we can put in place. We can reduce that variation by 20%. What effect does that have? We now can get almost 100% of our production in spec. So I only call attention to this because I think this is a great tool to flush out risk, especially when large scale decisions are being made. So that's a quick quality function deployment project. You can see as I open everything up, I have these tabs. And then if I needed to save anything, I would save it up here. And the cool thing is this is being saved in the cloud. So anybody with the appropriate role and authorization can access this. So we can share this project throughout the organization. Now I want to show you one more thing that, we talked about communication and we want to master continuous improvement. One way is to make sure we communicate effectively. When I was in the pharmaceutical industry and also the automotive industry, I remember I would dread the status meetings for continuous improvement projects. They often would take well over an hour, sometimes 2 hours. It was a group full of people that were relatively high ranking. We had plant managers, we had engineers, sometimes we had VPs. And often in that meeting, you would hear, well, we didn't get this task done or this part of the project done because we're busy with so many meetings. So what I call this is the great meeting eliminator. All of these elements, things like projects completed, where they're done, and this can be configured. This is just default, but even bigger, hard and soft savings, and where we are with actual against estimated. These are all things that anybody with access, any manager, whomever you want to have use this, they can keep track of what's going on, and they're going to see where is our progress. And then we can even put it in a detailed column set. And if they're looking at ROI, they can just pull up there. I don't have a lot in this one because we've got a lot of active projects, but we can pull up and see where we are from a financial standpoint. So the cool thing, what I've seen with a lot of my customers that are engaged users, they've changed from these arduous status meetings for CI to gap analyses. And sometimes those gap briefings are only 15, 20 minutes. So it really helps those people focus on projects, get them done, because we can tell where we're at any given time in these projects.